Hi, I'm Coach Jamie Dreyer from Overhaul Training, and in this video I'm going to show you how to release trigger points from a tight upper trapezius. So first off, let's cover this whole upper trapezius thing. Your trapezius in reality is one muscle, but we break it into sections, upper, middle, and lower, because this one muscle is actually quite huge. It runs from your occiput, which is the base of your skull, all the way down to T12, which is the beginning of your lower back. And then it attaches to all of the spinous processes, basically the outer tip of your spine going all the way down, and then wraps around as far as your shoulder bone, your clavicle. So seeing as it's so large and the fibers go in so many different directions, and therefore it does so many different things, we're going to break this muscle into thirds so we can just kind of attack it and absorb it a little bit more readily. Here we go, starting off with upper trap, also known as my traps. This is the meaty section up here that most people are familiar with. This particular section starts at your occiput, again, the base of your skull, and all the initial attachments run down your spine all the way as low as C7. So basically, all of your cervical vertebrae and the base of your skull is where it begins to attach, and then it wraps around or down depending on the direction. So up top, it kind of comes down and around, and the lower section wraps around and attaches to your, ready? Posterior border of the lateral third of your clavicle. You got that, right? No? Okay, let me break this down a little bit for you. So, the posterior border of your lateral third of your clavicle. Here's your clavicle, your collarbone. Let's go out to the lateral third, the outside. So we got 1, 2, 3. Here's the lateral third and the posterior border, which is the back side and the edge. Makes sense now, right? Okay, so the back side of your clavicle right over here is where all these fibers come down and converge on and attach to. So what does the muscle do? Well, most anybody and everybody who knows the word traps knows that you're also going to do shrugs when you train traps. So that is called scapular elevation. That's the easy one, but man, this muscle does a lot. So bear with me, here we go. Not only do we have scapular elevation, but we also have some scapular retraction, which is basically when we pull the scapula back. Now that's because some of these fibers run around and attach over here, and your clavicle is also part of the whole shoulder girdle and therefore attached to the scapula. So we've got elevation, retraction, and then we also have, ready anatomy nerds? Here we go. Upward rotation of the glenoid cavity. What? So upward rotation is when this whole shoulder girdle kind of rotates up that way. Your glenoid cavity is just a really fancy word for your shoulder socket. So upward rotation of your glenoid cavity. But we don't stop there. So let's imagine that your shoulder girdle is kind of locked down in place. Now those fibers attach up to your neck and your head. So if this isn't going to move, but the muscle is going to contract, then what you've got from there is cervical extension, right? If both sides contract at the same time, and then if only one side of your trap contracts, you have lateral flexion. Got it? I told you this muscle does a lot. That's why we're not wrapping it all up into one, because just a third of the trap is a lot as it is. All right, where do some of these trigger points potentially come from? What kind of activities would people be doing on a regular basis? So one is just carrying a heavy bag, right? We all know that, you know, if we want to exercise it, we're going to do shrugs. So if we're holding a heavy bag on our shoulder, and we don't want it to slide off, we're going to kind of shrug and hold that shrug for a long period of time. That's a really common possibility. The next is sitting on the phone. You don't want to hold your phone, you're on the computer, cooking, whatever. That's another possibility. Let's talk about violin. I haven't played the violin, so forgive me if I just completely slaughtered that pantomime there. But those are the things that you can do in an active way to engage trigger points. But there's another way that you can get trigger points in your upper trapezius, and that's more passive. An example of that would be if you sit at a desk or in a chair or travel quite a bit, some type of seating position where you've got an armrest that's a little too high, and you spend a lot of time seated like this. You're not engaging the muscle. It's passive, it's relaxed, but seeing as the muscle is stuck in this shortened position for extended periods of time. And if this is a place that you sit all the time, it could be day after day, week, months, years. Eventually, it gets used to being in that shortened position and trigger points can form. So moving forward, what do we do about it? Well, I like to bust out the PUREWAVE, put on my point stick, and dig in to some trigger points in the upper trap. Now, this is something a lot of you are going to be familiar with already, because anytime you think of like, oh, I'm going to get a shoulder rub, most often what somebody's going to rub on you is the trigger points in your upper traps. Everybody knows where this is. I don't think a human has ever existed without having a trigger point in their upper trap. And that's it. That's how you dig into that sucker on either side. Now, what if somebody has glommed your PUREWAVE and you don't have it to use right now, but you have a Theracane on hand? Here we go. This is also pretty simple. Just take your Theracane, find that same little sweet spot that you would have been digging in with your PUREWAVE, and give it some pressure. And you could change the angle a little bit, try and get that sucker to loosen up. Either way, whether you're working with the Theracane or the PUREWAVE, you're going to spend a couple of minutes on there, and eventually you're going to either get too sore and just need to give it a break, or you're going to feel pretty good and it's going to be time to move on to your stretch. When I want to go ahead and stretch my upper trap, the best position that I can do this in is seated. Now, if you've got somebody who cares about you and they have a little bit of weight behind them, they can stand right behind you and just lean in with their body weight onto your shoulders and press them down. And that'll give you a nice stretch. Just stay nice and tall if you're going to go that way. But if you don't have somebody around to put some weight and kind of stretch them down for you, you can do it yourself by grabbing a seat at a bench or a sturdy chair and grabbing your hands underneath where you're seated to anchor them. And then from here, you can start to kind of lean back and sit up nice and tall. Here you can, if I let go at the one side, you can see how it's pulling my shoulder down. That's giving me a really nice stretch in the trap. Now, if I want to go ahead and add a little PNF, all I do is engage the muscle, pull up a little bit into that resistance with the hands, hold it for 5 seconds, and at the end of 5, I relax the muscle, sit back farther, and get a little bit more of a stretch. So I slid my butt back there to get more traction on my traps. Give a little stretch there, and then I can do that again, hold it another contraction for about 5 seconds, and then relax, and continue to go farther and farther into the stretch. And that's how I release trigger points from a tight upper trap. See you in the next video.